Welcome to the Fogelnest Files. My name is Jake Fogelnest. I am a professional. Today on the show, a man who just told me he had the most disgusting vegan lunch. Moby is in studio with me.
And I only have myself to blame.
Okay.
Well, I've been a vegan now for 26 years.
26 years.
So I think vegan food is normally amazing. The problem is I made my own lunch.
Okay.
And it was one of those instances where I really should have had a nanny or a minder. So basically, here was my lunch that I made for myself.
Okay.
Spaghetti.
Uh-huh.
And like if I should have made it like a 4-year-old and put Oreos on top of it.
But like it's like a gluten-free pasta?
No, it had gluten in it. I like gluten.
Okay, you like gluten. Okay.
So it was like spaghetti, juice, because I'm pre-adolescent. And then for dessert, someone for Christmas gave me a bunch of vegan cupcakes.
Okay.
That's right, 3 of them.
Okay.
Like
yeah.
I was like this compulsive meth addict. Like I ate one cupcake and I was like, wow, that was indulgent to eat like one big chocolate cupcake. And then I ate a second. I was like, well, and I kind of I've never done crystal meth. I've done lots of other drugs.
Right.
But I imagine like if you have a big thing of crystal meth in front of you, you're like, oh, I've done most of it. I might as well finish it. So
you were on a vegan binge.
And I had this extra third cupcake and I was like, wow, I'm indulging in like compulsive addictive behavior. And I ate a third cupcake after a bowl of spaghetti. So I apologize. Like I might have some sort of like blood sugar. You're gonna
crash hard halfway through this podcast.
I'm just gonna start sobbing uncontrollably.
You're gonna have a big revelation about your childhood. It's just gonna come back to you, and you're gonna cry.
Like Uncle William, no.
And it will have nothing to do with me as an interviewer. It's not some sort of Barbara Walters thing that I have picked up. It is just purely gonna be because you have eaten too much today. I like that we just got right into it. I just dispersed with all the intro because we know each other a very, very long time.
We used to do karaoke together.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are recording. This is one of these episodes that we're recording live on the internet, so it will be up to watch on YouTube as well after we record it. And there's people watching it now live. Hello. So if you want to, if you're watching it live and you want to send tweets to me at Jake Fogelnest, I will glance at them and ignore them and probably not get to them because I have my own agenda with this man. There's so much to talk about. I met you in New York City, I want to say 1995. Thereabouts. And I think it was because we met for the first time at the Nasty Little Man offices. Does that ring a bell?
Probably.
Yeah.
That's either there or at one of those bars like Spy and Wax.
Wax, yeah.
1995 was a big year for me.
Yes.
Because it's when I gave up on 8 years of sobriety.
Really?
I mean, professionally, et cetera, things happened. But
sure.
Like it was a very distinctive year for me, like, because I had never expected to have a career as a musician.
Right.
And so like the early 90s, I was involved in the rave scene and I had this sort of like strange career as an electronic music guy. And I assumed it would be a flash in the pan.
Right.
And like by 1993, I'd be back teaching community college.
You'd have to get a job.
Yeah. And then 1995, I went on tour with the Chili Peppers and I did Lollapalooza. And I started drinking
Fuck
again.
it, I'll have a drink.
And all of a sudden I was like, wow, I guess I don't have to move back to Connecticut and teach community college. Not that there's anything wrong with Connecticut or community college. It has nice alliteration too, Connecticut Community College.
Yes, Connecticut Community College. It sounds like the Connecticut Community College of Broadcasting. Sounds like that would be an official. Can we go back to Connecticut for a second? The way that this show works, I pull clips of things that would be relevant of interest to myself and to my guest. Let's go back to Connecticut because before you were involved in the rave scene, and because you were a stone cold raver, I'm not afraid to say it.
I was a raver.
You were a raver.
I had the big giant pants. I had back when I had hair, I had the most awkward haircut. I basically shaved my entire head except for a 4 or 5 inch long prong sticking off the front of my head.
That's very silly.
And
That's
I think it's one of the reasons I don't have hair is because God and Jesus got together
and they said,
and they basically ran an intervention.
You're mocking us with this
it's
nonsense.
kind of like child services taking a child away from like crystal meth addicted parents. Like they said, like you're abusing.
You don't deserve. Your hair privileges have been revoked.
So that's why I'm bald. Is
because you were doing like sort of a thing that Skrillex would look at and go, "What are you doing?" Right?
Probably. Like, it seemed like a good idea at the time. Do you remember, like, Liquid Sky?
Yes.
Like, everyone was wearing, like, big pants. And
I want to get into all that. Let's go back before rave culture, because you're a part of the hardcore scene.
Yes.
And we'll play a little Flipper.
Oh, okay.
You'll recognize this song.
I wasn't in Flipper.
I know you weren't, yeah.
Although I just ran into one of the guys in Flipper, it turns out he lives around the corner from me in LA.
Really?
Yeah.
So tell me about like growing up in Connecticut, because I'm fascinated by, and though we know each other a long time, I don't think I've ever asked you, like, how do you go from the hardcore scene to the rave scene? What was like?
So I grew up utterly poor white trash
right.
in one of the wealthiest towns in the United States, Darien, Connecticut.
Yeah, that's a wealthy town.
You know, Chloe Sevigny's from Darien.
We'll talk about later.
Actually, there are lots
for
of
Liquid Sky reasons.
Robert Downey Jr. lived in Darien.
Right.
Gus Van Sant, Ann Coulter, Topher Grace, Steve-O. It's like the weirdest. I know.
That's the weirdest Ocean's 11 movie ever.
Yeah. And it's a population of 15,000 people. Like,
right.
How did Gus Van Sant and Ann Coulter come from the same place?
Right.
It's amazing. But so I grew up there, and my mom and I were on welfare and food stamps till I was about 18.
Right.
And so I spent my entire childhood pretending I wasn't poor.
How does that manifest itself?
Well, you go to the supermarket, you buy like the sneakers that have 4 stripes on them for like $1.99 in the bin, and then you take them home. You try and cut off
one,
so it looks like you hope that the girl you like doesn't pay.
But you can
attention.
See the stitching. The stitching on one of them is still there. Yeah.
And you try and pretend to yourself that like Wrangler jeans from the cutout bin are actually acceptable,
right?
Even though you go to school and people throw garbage at you.
Did people actually throw garbage at you?
In my mind, they did.
Like you learn to sew just so you can write Jordache.
Yeah. And I had one nice shirt growing up. I had one Izod shirt, and I probably wore it 4 or 5 days out of the week. Like that's how I learned how to wash clothes.
Right.
I would when it started to smell too much like cat pee, which for some reason all my clothes smelled like.
Right. Which is weird because you didn't own a cat.
So when it started to smell too bad, I would just wash it so I could keep wearing it in the hope that all the people at my school didn't notice that I was wearing the exact same shirt 4 or 5 days out of the week.
Right. Well, they just thought, oh, Moby's inspired by Albert Einstein, who did the same thing.
Exactly.
He had like a uniform.
I wish I'd known that back then.
So
that's what I would have said.
Was hardcore at that time, was that sort of a refuge because it was just an inclusive scene of we don't care how much you have? Or?
Yeah, it was basically I'd say up until the time I was about 13 years old, desperately trying to fit in and doing everything in my power to figure out what the status quo was about.
Right.
And so if the status quo was about smoking pot, I would pretend that I liked smoking pot.
Right.
If the status quo was about the Grateful Dead, I would pretend that I liked the Grateful Dead.
That's tough.
I know.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. Grateful Dead. And I have an appreciation for the culture, but I felt like it was such flagrant misrepresentation because I'd go to the record store and you would look at this record and it said the Grateful Dead and it had skulls on it.
Cool skulls on it. They're dancing and stuff.
And you take it home and you want it to sound like Black Sabbath.
This has nothing to do with death.
And instead it sounds like Oh Brother Wherefore Art Thou, or whatever. It's like delicate, like Devil, a friend of mine.
Yeah.
Like I wanted like Ozzy, Sabbath, Motorhead.
You're expecting doom metal and
it's banjos.
And what you get is banjos. Yes, that's exactly it.
So basically up until age 13 or 14, I really wanted to fit in and I was very bad at fitting in. And then I remember my sort of Saul on the road to Damascus moment where the scales fell from my eyes and I saw things clearly was, Mike O'Donoghue?
Michael O'Donoghue, Mr. Mike?
Mr. Mike.
Very much, yes.
For SNL.
Literally one of my biggest influences and my favorite.
Okay, well, he put out a
Mondo
movie.
Video.
Mr. Mike's Mondo Video.
Mr. Mike's Mondo Video, yeah.
And I went to South Norwalk, Connecticut to watch it with my mom because my mom was a counterculture person.
You saw it in the theater, right?
In the theater.
Because the thing about Mr. Mike's Mondo Video, which by the way, I can't tell you, couldn't be more of a bigger influence to me. Mr. Mike's Mondo Video was a special made by Michael O'Donoghue in 1978, and basically it was SNL would be on for 3 weeks, and then one of the weeks would be a special. And so they said, well, Michael, you're creative on SNL. People like Mr. Mike. Why don't you go make an NBC special? So he made one. He handed it in, and NBC basically said, there is no way that we are putting this on television. None of it is airable. So they actually transferred the video to film, and New Line Cinema released it theatrically in 1980.
I was one of the 6 people who saw it
in the
theater.
Yes.
So my mom and I went to see it. And it was basically a clip show.
Yeah.
It was like videotape of him throwing cats into swimming pools.
Yes.
And one of the things he had was Sid Vicious singing My Way.
Yes.
And I was sitting in the theater in Norwalk, Connecticut in 78 or 79 with my mom, and I see this, because Sid Vicious singing My Way, it starts sort of normal.
It starts with this the beautiful string section, and then it
ends with him firing a handgun into the audience.
Yeah, and this was the footage that the Great Rock and Roll Swindle had not come out yet.
Yeah.
This is the footage from the Great Rock and Roll Swindle, which Mr. Mike put into Mondo Videos, one of the segments. Klaus Nomi's also in Mr. Mike's Mondo video.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That freaked me out.
Yeah, because
I was 13 or 14 years old, and the footage of him, because it's like all these strobe lights, and it's beautiful and terrifying.
Yeah.
I do think Klaus Nomi is sort of like an unsung creative genius.
Yeah.
But so I see Sid Vicious singing My Way, and something snapped in me, and I was like, "This is what I want to do. This is amazing."
So,
and then like a week later, I heard The Clash. I Fought the Law on the radio,
and you're done. That's it.
And then a friend of mine somehow ended up with the first B-52s album.
Oh, forget it. It's a perfect storm.
And then I was like, why am I wasting my time pretending to like music so I can fit in because basically all this music was like this fantastic celebration of disenfranchisement.
Yeah.
And I had been pretending that like I wasn't poor white trash. And then all of a sudden I was like, it's okay to be poor white trash. In fact,
embrace it.
Yeah. And that's so Sid Vicious and My Way from the Great Rock and Roll Swindle and Mr. Mike's Mondo video was that transformational moment. And then I started taking the train in and out of New York to buy records and go to clubs. I mean, the time it was...
Where would you go?
I mean, I was like 14, 15, so going to like Mud Club.
Mud Club,
I remember seeing Fear at the Mud Club.
Forget it. Come on.
And
come on.
CBs, like the Bad Brains, going to the matinees eventually. And then when I was like 16 or 17... Peppermint Lounge, Danceteria.
Right.
I feel like such an old guy, by the way.
No,
like this is like Broadway Danny Rose.
Well, here let's start with New York, because in 92, a club opened up in New York City, and there was the hardcore scene, but that sort of died off, and then New York City nightlife became dominated by the club kids and sort of rave culture.
Oh, so one thing so just to answer your question about how hardcore happened, so basically I was going to nightclubs in New York, and Danceteria was a perfect example of this. It had 7 levels,
right,
and each level was different. So like you'd go to the basement to see the Bad Brains, and then the floor above it would be a disco DJ, and the floor above that would be a reggae DJ, and the floor above that would be a new wave video lounge. So you would just like, as a 16-year-old kid, I would wander from floor to floor, and in my mind,
subculture to subculture, yeah,
and this open embrace of anything counterculture. Basically, if it existed in New York south of 23rd Street, in my mind, it was okay. So if I went to the Peppermint Lounge and the DJ was playing dub reggae, I was like, oh, I guess I like dub reggae. And if they were playing disco, I was like, oh, I guess I like disco. So it basically got exposed to all this different music without any filter.
That's so great, especially being that young, and there's punk can be very closed off too, where it's just like I only like like there's a great story about Belushi, who was a big fan of Fear. And he's sort of, he had just come off of the Blues Brothers, and
was he involved in getting them to play on SNL?
Yes, he's completely involved. The reason why Fear played on SNL is because of Belushi.
I mean, I love SNL, but in my mind, one could make a case that like SNL jumped the shark after Fear played.
Yeah, I mean, it's how do you top that insane moment? But there's this thing about Belushi being very wrongheaded about punk, about like he took all his blues records and he gave them to, I think, Mitch Glazer is one of the writers on Mondo Video, and he's just like, I don't need these records anymore. I'm only listening to Fear and the Dead Kennedys. And I think Mitch Glazer was like, this seems wrongheaded to me. So it's really interesting that you could go in Danceteria, subculture to subculture, and appreciate it all. And it's all, the Beastie Boys are also the same way, because they, totally started playing, they're playing with Bad Brains at those CB's hardcore matinees.
I remember seeing them doing Egg Raid on Mojo.
Yeah, and then the worlds of hip-hop started to influence them. So leads me to this, 1992. This is a commercial that I would see on New York cable television. I think you'll recognize it right away, and it's for Club USA. Just an onslaught of techno drug culture. in my living room saying, you want to come to this club, man, and I can't go to this club. My mother would not let me. She would not. There was very little that my mom would not let me do. But I got a voicemail one time, like, "Hi, this is Michael Alec from Disco 2000. You got to come down to Limelight and hang out with us." And I was like, "Hey, Mom, can I go to hang out with people at Disco 2000?" And she was like, "No, you
should have said they cared enough to leave me a voicemail.
They left me a voicemail, Mom.
It would be rude for me not to go.
That was my argument. It would be rude. This is a cool New York thing." And she was like, "Absolutely not." Fast forward, of course, to a couple months later, Michael Alec murdered a drug dealer named Angel.
Okay, I would like to just flesh out the details here, which is an ironic turn of phrase given what I'm about to say.
Yes.
But basically, so Michael Alec, who was a sort of friendly acquaintance of mine.
Yeah.
So New York in the late 80s, as you remember, was utterly decimated by AIDS and crack.
Yes, it just wiped everything out.
I was DJing in a lot of different clubs, playing hip-hop, playing house music. Every day I would go to work and someone would say like, "Oh, did you hear about Joey who works the door at the tunnel? He got shot last night." Or did you hear about Henry? Yeah, he's dead now. Like it was kind of like living in Sarajevo.
Right.
And you just got accustomed to this, like, oh, people die left and right. That's New York, And then the club kids came along in this sort of like Weimar Republic, like in the background of like AIDS and crack, all of a sudden these fashionistas came along who painted themselves and were just utterly degenerate in a completely like lighthearted celebratory way.
Celebratory, yes.
At the beginning.
It
was like 89, it was very celebratory.
Yeah.
But then
let's take Special K.
Yeah, it was like
it'll be fun.
We'll do a hit of ecstasy and maybe on a crazy night do some Special K.
Right.
Fast forward 4 years, they're all like shooting methadone cocktails into their face. Like an average night for the club kids became like start out with Special K, crystal meth, acid. As the night progresses, maybe do some heroin, and then like do like 4 hits of acid again as the sun is coming. Like it was just it was nuts.
It sounds disgusting.
But then Michael Alec, who had been this like kind of like Pan-esque, lighthearted figure, he did disappear down the rabbit hole of drugs and whatnot. And he got in an argument with his drug dealer and killed him. And Angel, who sat dead for a few days in their apartment, and apparently at some point he realized he had to do something with his dead body.
Yeah.
So he did as much heroin as he could, then dismembered the body, put it in a box, and threw it in the river. Yeah. Not knowing that boxes float. So.
Didn't they have to buy a big TV first so they could get a box?
Yeah.
Like.
Which is the most surprising thing, that junkies would spend money on a TV.
On a TV. Well, it's kind of great junkie logic of like, well, I got to get a big box. Like,
I bet you that part of their logic was, we'll buy the TV, bring it home, put the chopped up drug dealer in the box, and then sell the TV. Yeah. Or like one of them was like, can we steal the TV from ourselves? Because we don't understand how to have a TV if you haven't stolen it.
I had no business going to Limelight at that age.
It was, but oddly enough, I was sober during that time. Yeah, so I had like an 8-year chunk of sobriety. So while all this craziness
did that come
was going
from
on,
like straight edge?
It came from being just kind of uptight and wanting to judge people.
Right.
I had been straight edge in the early 80s, but I was a very confused straight edge because I would drink a lot.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's a confused straight edge. So or you're just bad at it. Yeah.
So I would go to A7 or Great Gildersleeves and see Minor Threat and see the other straight edge bands, and then go get drunk afterwards.
Right.
I like Minor Threat. I like having the X on my hand, but I also really like drinking. Why? It seemed so arbitrary to choose between the two. So,
right.
But then around 1987, I was working in a bar, and I realized every terrible thing I'd seen was the result of liquor and drugs. Like every murder, every whatever, was all like something bad because of liquor and drugs. I was like, oh, I guess I'll stop. And then once I stopped, I realized as a sober person, I could work in the bar and judge everyone. Amazing. And so I was utterly insufferable. How I had friends during this period, because I was like the most uptight, judgmental douchebag.
Right, okay.
I mean, I still probably am. But so during the club kid years, when everyone was like losing their mind on all these different drugs, I was sober, which is why they made a documentary about the Limelight recently.
Yeah.
And I'm featured in it. Not because of my like trenchant insights, but because I remember.
Because you remember, yeah.
Yeah, no one else that they talked to, everyone else they talked to was like, like.
That documentary was interesting too, because I didn't realize sort of Peter Gatien was the guy who ran the Limelight, and they eventually the city of New York just shut down Limelight because like this is a drug market. It's insane in here, and you're involved, And really, what I learned from that documentary is that Peter Gatien wasn't really involved. He was doing his best to run an honest business. He was invaded by drugs. He tried very hard to keep them out. And then eventually they just got him on taxes, because you can't run a nightclub in New York City without skimming on taxes. Yeah. It's the law that was set by Steve Rubel and Ian Schrager at Studio 54.
So it's funny. So you played the video. Oh, there's me on the TV.
Yeah, you're on TV.
Oh, I look so middle-aged.
That's okay. I just look like it. Look. Hello, welcome back to Tiny Skinny Weirdos. It's a new internet show that somebody finds erotic, I'm sure.
And I sort of look like if you cross like David Cross with a thumb.
Here, we'll play something that inspired you. You'll recognize this music immediately, as will anybody that is a good human being. It instantly makes me want to shut down and just be like, quiet. I fucking love Twin Peaks so much.
I know.
I just love it so much. That, of course, is
Laura Palmer's theme.
The Laura Palmer's theme from Twin Peaks, which you then sampled.
So basically, the first single I put out under my own name was this song called Go, and it was this weird, poorly recorded, minimal techno track. And a British record label wanted to release it, so I was like, oh, I guess I have to do a remix of it. And I was watching Twin Peaks obsessively. And I heard Laura Palmer's theme, and every time I heard it, it made my organs feel funny.
Yeah.
Like in both an amazing and disconcerting way.
It's that music is...
So I tried to sample it, but it was way too slow, so I had to replay it.
Right, wow.
And so the good thing about that is I ended up not being sued for it.
Oh, wow.
Simply because I had been incompetent in my efforts to steal it. So it's basically like I tried to steal it. Like I did everything in my power to steal it, but I couldn't. So I had to replay it myself, and as a result, Warner Brothers couldn't sue me. But it's how I got to know David Lynch and Angelo Badalamenti.
Right. Here, this is this the right? There's a million mixes of it, Moby. I don't know if I found the right one. This is the Wood Tick mix.
That's the right one.
This is the right one. Good. And this is the first music that I heard of yours, for sure.
And this was particularly strange because the original version of this song, Go, sold around 2,000 copies.
And who put it out?
It's Instinct Records.
Instinct Records.
And I was thrilled. I couldn't believe it. Like, I was DJing in New York. I'd put out a record on a dance label, and I'd sold 2,000 copies.
That is pretty big for a dance track in New York City.
Like, I was stunned. Like, I couldn't believe. I even got a record review and dance music review, and they actually gave it a nice review. And I was like, wow, I can't believe I'm like making my own records in New York, and I have an apartment. I didn't have a girlfriend because I didn't bathe very often, and plus, I mean. Yeah,
you had there were certain things that came to you later in life about being a grown up. I'm with you on that.
So then we did the remix that you just played, and it became a top 10 record throughout Europe and sold like close to 1 million copies.
That's 1 million copies on that
track.
Of a single,
yeah.
And this is before Play, which we'll get to. Like, that's insane what happened there.
So
but that's still insane. 1 million copies.
So to put it in perspective, when the first version of Go came out, one of the ways I fed myself is my roommates and I would have parties. And because I was sober, I would wake up early and go around and collect all the bottles and cans and go stand in line with the homeless people at the Food Emporium in Union Square.
Right.
Now it's an A&P, or maybe then it was an A&P. No, then it was Food Emporium.
Yeah, I think it's
so I would basically return bottles and cans to make enough money to buy food. Like soy milk was a big luxury.
Right.
So that's when the first single came out. And then when the remix came out, I was on Top of the Pops in between Phil Collins and Michael Jackson.
That's where Top of the Pops is so weird. And England is so weird, is that like it'll be the most... like even more here than America, the most like commercial nonsense mixed with the weirdest single. It's like I don't know how their charts work over there.
I mean, I think it's changed quite a lot, but back then the only criteria for being on Top of the Pops was you had to have a single in the top 40.
That's it.
So that meant you would have Metallica and like a school choir singing about birds, you know, or in my case, like. It was like me, a couple other like weird dance acts, Phil Collins, and Michael Jackson. And I maintain that I inspired a Genesis song.
Really?
Because, maybe not me, but it was 1991. I was on Top of the Pops, and Phil Collins was watching me do my sound check, and he looked so miffed. Just
like angry?
Like, kind of like he's like I neither understand this nor do I like it. and then he put out this song called I Can't Dance.
Yes, sure.
And I think that somehow his dislike of me playing dance music inspired him to write the song. I mean, that's kind of like negative narcissism.
Yeah, but it's fantastic. It's a great story.
Yeah, I also had one of the most embarrassing things ever happen to me, and it still hurts. Okay, ready?
Yeah.
So the second time I was on Top of the Pops was like 92. Don McLean was on.
Oh boy,
they had just re-released American Pie.
Yeah. Story after story about this guy, Don McLean. Go on.
So we're in when you did Top of the Pops, you'd get there at 8 in the morning and have to be there all day.
Sure, fun. Yeah.
And so I'm hanging out.
Very conducive environment for musicians.
Yeah. So I'm hanging out in the commissary, like eating French fries, and I'm talking to my manager, and I'm like, oh boy, like look at all the people who are on. I mean, and I was like, Don McLean. I mean, he's got to be like 80. I mean, like, so I go on and on about how old Don McLean is, and then I look next to me, and there's like the thinnest little partition, and Don McLean is sitting 4 inches away from me, listening to everything. And I was like, and I literally, all I wanted to do, I was like, if you had given me a live hand grenade, I would have swallowed it happily just to die.
Just to get out of that situation.
I'm so ashamed.
And so, did you have any sort of confrontation with Don McLean, or was it just? Well, let me make you feel better about it, because Don McLean, from what I hear, is a terrible, terrible human being. Oh. He has had this ongoing feud with
Eminem.
Yeah, with Eminem. I forgot about that. I totally forgot about that. Your own troubles with that guy. He's a grump. But Don McLean. Andy Breckman, the guy who created Monk, and he's a radio personality on WFMU. He's a writer for Letterman. Early in his career, he opened for Don McLean as a singer, and I guess they had the same manager. And Don McLean treated him like garbage. And Andy wrote this amazing essay about it, which has been on the internet forever, which eventually got to Don McLean, who responded. And the 2 essays, I'll email it to you. The 2 essays are presented side by side, and you will see very clearly.
So maybe when I was...
He had it coming, is what I'm saying.
When I was accidentally being mean to Don McLean, maybe on some inadvertent level, I was like an instrument of karmic retribution.
It's exactly what you were. You were karmic retribution.
I still felt like the biggest douchebag.
Yeah, no, it's
which is a recurring theme.
So you become very successful as a dance artist. The New York City in the 90s was a very special time for television, and we are recording this episode today on December 18th, and I learned today that the great Al Goldstein passed away. Al Goldstein was a New York legend, and in 1995 was
founder of Screw Magazine.
Founder of Screw Magazine. He was a pornographer. It's like if you were to get Al Goldstein's business card, it would be Al Goldstein, pornographer, of the most
unapologetic
pornographer.
Like when you think of pornographer, even if he wasn't a pornographer, you'd still think of him.
Yeah, and so 1995, he was probably at the height of his power. This was before the internet. Screw Magazine was huge, and he also had his own long-running cable show in Manhattan, Midnight Blue.
See, cable, like or UHF or cable, because I remember watching UHF when I was growing up, and you could sometimes get it on UHF.
Yeah.
It's still, I remember watching his show, and Robin Burr as well. Like, but seeing porn on television.
It's mind-blowing.
Like,
and it was
now porn is everywhere. It's like, I'm so jaded. I'm like, oh, look, 7 pregnant people having sex on a trampoline. Like, who cares?
Whatever.
But back then, it was like, there's a breast on television. Where are the stormtroopers, and why are they not shutting this down?
When I was a kid in New York City, and we got Manhattan cable for the first time. We had those brown boxes with the buttons, and you
I remember the brown boxes with the button, and there was one button I never understood.
Yeah.
Do you remember the button with the asterisk?
Yeah, what is that?
I was like, why is there a button with an asterisk?
I don't know what that did. Yeah, that channel didn't come in. But you would be pressing, and it'd be like totally normal. Like, oh, that's an I Love Lucy rerun. That's what was the episode of Fernwood Tonight?
Fernwood Tonight.
There's Chuck Scarborough and Sue Simmons.
One thing. If it was an episode of Fernwood Tonight, you wouldn't have hit.
No, I wouldn't have. You're right. I would have stayed right on.
Martin Mull.
The funniest. The greatest.
And Fred Willard.
Forget it.
Yeah.
Fernwood Tonight's
and Rich Little.
Was Rich Little on first? Well, Frank Duvall was. He was
I thought for some reason Rich Little was
Happy Kind and the Mirth Makers. Yeah. But no, you would flick through the dials, and then it would be these normal things, and then it would be an ad for 970 PISS and 970P.
And the extra E is for extra P.
The extra E is for extra P. And Al Goldstein had a show. Yeah. So this is just a little montage. He passed away today. He was an important fighter of obscenity. He was
both a promoter of and defender of obscenity.
Promoter and defender of obscenity. Mm-hmm. And he had a very these are just some clips of just a 45-second montage that we will enjoy of Al Goldstein's Midnight Blue.
Tonight we have to do the inevitable. Go fuck yourself, Santa Claus.
Fuck them, fuck everyone. Al Goldstein. Most of the cab drivers in New York City. Fuck you.
Oh, the Flamingo sucks. Fuck you, BMW.
Kentucky Fried Chicken, you lying, fraudulent, scumbag bastards. President Crandall really is a buck-toothed, cocksucking piece of shit. Fuck you, Chili.
So the women in general, and to dating in particular, fuck you, and now I know why guys suck dick and are gay. I think I want to find me a cock.
Well, the DA in New York, he's older. He's older than dirt. What's wrong with a democracy is its people. Fuck you.
Yeah, and that's Al Goldstein.
What's wrong with a democracy is its people.
Wow. So Al passed away, and I.
Do you know when I read about that earlier?
Yeah.
I was like, oh. Okay, well, he's very old.
Yeah.
But just watching that, I really feel like the world's a poorer place.
Yeah, we're worse off without Al Goldstein. And my favorite thing was, let me pull this up because I had tweeted this out earlier today.
Wait, you tweet?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I'm on twitter.com. But I tweeted this out earlier today. In the New York Times obituary for Al Goldstein, there was a correction, which is the funniest thing that I've ever read. And it said, correction, December 19th, 2013. An earlier version of this article misstated the name of a movie Mr. Goldstein starred in. It is Al Goldstein and Ron Jeremy are screwed, not Al Goldstein and Ron Jeremy get screwed. So the New York Times wanted to make that clear.
I wonder when the New York Times is going to use profanity. Because like when I remember the day that the New Yorker started using the word fuck.
Right.
And that felt like a tectonic cultural shift. Like they're using, it's the New Yorker. It's like they're saying fuck. We have like the last 3 or 4 presidents of the United States have all admitted to doing cocaine or like taking drugs.
The New York Times can drop a well-placed F-bomb, I think.
So isn't it odd? Okay, I'm
you
going
think you think the gray lady hasn't like gotten frustrated every once in a while and been like, oh, fuck this? You know?
I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming the journalists do.
The journalists do, yeah.
Especially in the face of like encroaching digital media.
Sure.
But I don't know if they've ever printed the word.
I've never seen it.
Fuck.
I've never seen it.
Okay.
They always dance around it, and it's, you know what I mean. Like they'll be like, and then there was an expletive that and sometimes they get cute with it, but I've never actually just seen fuck.
But then we had like Dick Cheney saying fuck on camera.
Yeah.
Like Vice President of the United States can say fuck.
Right.
But yet the FCC will fine someone for saying fuck.
What if the New York Times headline tomorrow is just fuck?
Fuck.
Yeah. That'd be great. That would be so cool. Mm-hmm. I would buy a print copy.
They still make print copies?
Yes, they do.
Oh, okay.
I
guess old people need something for their. Yeah.
You brought up Robin Bird. So I pulled a little bit of Robin Bird, who this was an amazing show that was on cable in New York City. I imagine you go out, to one of your rave parties, and you come home and you turn on TV, and Robin Bird would be there, and Robin Bird was a small porn star who had like a bit part, I think, in Debbie Does Dallas.
The thing is, I never actually saw her naked.
No, she never got naked.
No, I'd watch her show constantly in the hope that like at some point you'd see Robin Bird naked.
No, but
and this was of course pre-internet, so you couldn't like Google search like Robin Bird naked image, and turn off safe search.
I like that the idea of you like, I'm going to turn off safe search now. Okay, I've gotten the material I need. Let me turn safe search back on.
By the way, here's my question regarding safe search.
Okay.
If I was 12 years old and I was using a computer, wouldn't you just turn Safe Search on?
Oh, yeah.
And then you turn it back off when you're done?
Like the first thing I do. Yeah.
Like it's like, how is that protecting anyone?
I don't know. Who do you think I am? Johnny Google over here? That's my new catchphrase. Hey, who do you think I am? Johnny Google over here? I said it a second time, so it would count as a catchphrase.
And isn't it nice that Google is relatively benign?
Yeah.
Like, just imagine they're so powerful. Like, they're like this ultra-national government.
Yeah.
Like they're more powerful than almost any government. It's nice that they're basically like Burning Man hippies.
Yeah, that is
like just
kind of
imagine
nice,
if Google had some weird cryptic right-wing agenda, how awful it would be. Like, isn't it nice they're ostensibly one of us?
Yeah, it's our they're. I mean, that's that motto that they have of don't be evil, which is the.
It's like the Hippocratic Oath for the 21st century.
Yeah, just don't be evil. This is Robin Bird, New York City Cable. This is something that she would do often on the show, which is just show people how to make a dental dam.
And it is an exciting thing. And as always, we...
Oh, Cable. When you just do your makeup on TV.
always encourage my...
She kind of looks like David St.
there.
Hubbins from Spinal Tap, doesn't she?
Hold on a minute, she really does.
The patron saint of quality footwear?
Yeah, the patron saint of quality footwear.
Going down on your loved one.
Was she in Whitesnake?
Even if you are a heterosexual couple, yes, indeed, yes, you do need a condom.
They don't make Quaaludes anymore, but you don't. If you don't need Quaaludes, you just watch this and you get the same effect.
So going back to Quaaludes, this actually ties things. Okay, so the band Flipper, I sang with them for 2 days because one of their singers had been thrown in jail for like illegal Quaalude possession.
Okay.
But Quaaludes were not a controlled substance.
Right.
They got out of jail, but for 2 days in Connecticut, they didn't have a second lead singer, and I knew all the words to the songs, so I got drafted.
You got drafted.
They were so high the entire time, they don't remember this. Because I played a Flipper reunion show.
Right.
And I was like, don't you remember, like, 1982, I was 16? And they're like,
what?
We don't remember anything.
Right. That's amazing.
So it all comes full circle.
Yeah, because Robin Bird, like, this was a segment that she would do.
A dental dam.
Where
and
she
you say
would.
To yourself, well, what is a dental dam? Well, of course, I don't know if we can get scissors here in the studio. Do we have scissors here in the
Which is so funny about this, she doesn't have scissors, that she would do this every episode. It was not like like Robin Bird had like 3 bits that she would do. She'd have the strippers come out and they would dance. They were like, from Flash Dancers,
and there'd be
Cassandra.
Yeah, and someone would have a boombox.
Yeah.
And like, okay, ready, press pause on the cassette. And they play like a 38 special song.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then she would show people how to make a dental dam, which I'll fast forward a little bit.
Which begs another question.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever
used a dental dam?
Used a dental dam?
No.
I mean, it's basically just a piece of plastic, right?
Let me tell you something. I never heard of one of these. Now, granted, I'm not a lesbian or a woman, but I'd never heard of one of these things.
I believe
except
heterosexuals use them as well. I think that, like, if you're a man enjoying a lady's naked Christian company.
No, I'm not doing that.
No,
I'm not. Because look, and it's.
Why, you're a rapper?
Ask me, well, how do you do it? Now, you see, this is a condom.
No.
Okay?
No. Let me be clear. I will do that. I will do that all night long. It's great. I won't get a condom and cut it up as Robin Bird instructs.
I think you could also.
I'll take my chances.
But you could also, like, I mean, because I've watched her do this.
Condom.
You could use saran
And
wrap.
what
Like, you
we
just
do
couldn't you?
is-
Or like
it's
a
like a
glad
hat.
bag. Like,
And-
it's anything. It's
I
just.
don't
I
know.
think it's just supposed to be like a piece of plastic separating mucous membrane.
It's exactly what it is. It's a boundary.
And it's back when in the 80s when no one knew how HIV was transmitted.
Right.
Like, I remember friends of mine in like 86, 87 who wouldn't use public toilets.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
I remember going to Nell's, like finally getting into Nell's.
Well, I wouldn't use public toilets in
friend of
Nell's
mine was
just
like,
in general.
Yeah, and a friend of mine was like, I really have to pee. And I was like, well, go pee. He's like, I'm afraid I'll get AIDS. I was like, I know enough about viral transmission to know that you cannot get AIDS peeing into a toilet. He's like, I'm not going to risk it.
It's so horrible.
That man was Jeffrey Dahmer.
Jeffrey Dahmer was not on the club scene,
Can
Moby.
I tell you the best pickup line I've ever heard?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I was in Milwaukee in 1994, or thereabouts. And I'd played a concert, and I was walking to my tour bus, and a man came up to me and said, hey, great show. Do you want to go get a drink? And I said, no, sorry. I have to get on the tour bus and drive to Chicago. And he then said, oh, come on, there's a really great gay bar around the corner. And I said, well, I'm really flattered, but I'm straight, and I have to go to Chicago. He's like, just come on, let's just hang out. I said, look, you're really cute. Unfortunately, I'm straight, and I have to go to Chicago. And then he was like, oh, I'll give you a blowjob behind the bus. And I was like, wow, I'm really flattered. And if I were gay, I would take you up on it. But alas, I'm not gay, and I have to go to Chicago. And his final way of trying to seal the deal, he said, I used to date Jeffrey Dahmer. And
like, oh, well, when you put it that way,
how
could I leave behind a history? There's
isn't
history.
That the most remarkable pickup line you've ever heard?
That is nuts. Yeah, that's great.
I know you're not gay.
Yeah, I know you're going to Chicago.
But maybe you'll make an exception because I used to date Jeffrey Dahmer.
Did it change your mind?
No.
Okay,
but you notice I paused.
Because you thought about it. Like it's like, well, that is because it's almost like, well, that's so unusual. I'm interested in counterculture. I guess I do need to experience this.
And there's something to be said. Like I always maintain, it's better to have like a terrible vacation with good pictures than an okay vacation with shitty pictures. Right. So, like, a story is so valuable. Like, the experience itself, like, who really cares? But if you can get an anecdote out of something, like we were talking last night. Yeah. I moved to LA recently to this weird old house, and I was taking out my recycling, and this old lady came up to me while I was taking out my recycling, and she said, "Do you live here?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Do you know," I was going to say Jeffrey Dahmer, "Do you know Errol Flynn used to have sex parties in your house?" And I was like, and I was just like, "Thank you so much," because I don't think he did, but that's a great anecdote. So I'm just gonna assume, like we were saying yesterday, like it's so much better to have like an entertaining falsehood than a banal truth.
Absolutely.
You know,
I will say this:
who cares? Like it's the worst. It's the reason I hated Scooby Doo.
Right.
Because at the very end, the monster was the guy who ran the hardware store.
Always a guy in a mask.
I want the monster to stay a monster. Like let the entertaining lie become the truth.
Just
like
bad storytelling.
Who cares?
It was bad storytelling. It's what that was. By the way, there was no woman that was outside of your house the other day. That was a ghost.
That was a
ghost. That's what that was. So wait, okay, so
but if she was a ghost, why was she... Okay, never mind. Sorry.
So what? So it's like the mid '90s when I meet you, and there was Liquid Sky was a clothing store that, because we lived in the same neighborhood too. We were neighbors, so I would see you all the time. And there was a clothing store called Liquid Sky, which was a rave store. It was really cool. They had records and clothing and stuff. Chloe Seven, you worked there as a cashier. Yeah. Even after kids had come out, like, you know, because Chloe was young. And
I used to drive one place I worked at in Connecticut, because Chloe and I lived near each other in Connecticut. That's right, yeah. So when she was 13, I would drive her to this all ages club where I was a DJ.
So great.
It was in an Episcopalian church in Greenwich, Connecticut. So like and Topher Grace used to hang out there too.
So amazing.
But it was like, I mean, can you imagine anything less cool? And it was the Bush family church.
What a weird crew.
Yeah.
The whole thing sounds like
and Jeffrey Dahmer.
And Jeffrey Dahmer. Yeah, but Liquid Sky was this store, and we all used to hang out, and we would go to karaoke, and we would have fun. It was magical nights.
And 1995, as going full circle, that's when I started drinking again.
That's when you started drinking
again. I have since stopped drinking.
Yeah, as have I. Yeah.
95, 96, 97 was a magical time because my liver was all fresh and pink.
Right.
So I could drink without consequences.
Right.
Like, you know, you'd stay up until 6 o'clock in the morning getting drunk, and then by 9, you're fine.
It was no big deal. So what happens in, I guess, 1999 or 2000 when you make a record called Play, which I remember getting as it first came out, and I was like, "Oh wow, this is great! It's a great record," and then it becomes it was an enormous success. Like, did that, as you were starting to drink again, and all that success was thrown at you, did you lose your fucking mind?
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, by 1996, I put out an album called Animal Rights, which is this dark punk rock record.
That was great, and you covered the Mission of Burma song, yeah.
And that record failed comprehensively and miserably, and that's
interesting because it was right at the time that like electronic music was starting to catch on.
It was right before. It was right. It was basically, but I didn't make an electronic record that had rock elements like the Prodigy did. I just made a really nasty, dark punk rock record, and Rolling Stone gave it 2 out of 10 stars.
Nice.
And I went on tour, and it's best summed up by the show that we played in Paris while on the Animal Rights tour. We sold 75 tickets, and at the end of the night, there were 20 people in the audience.
Wow. And how big was the venue? It was
150 people.
Right, so you were half filled. And
that's what the tour was like. So basically, I started working on the album Play, and I was convinced that my career was over.
Right. And was this in your home studio on
on Mott Street?
On Mott Street, yeah.
And so, but I was convinced. I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to move back to Connecticut, teach community college, and that's okay. Maybe I'll go back to school and study architecture. that's perfectly fine. I'll put out this one last record. Maybe if my label will let me put it out, maybe they'll have charity and take pity on me. And then we put it out, and it didn't do very well.
Right.
So I still assumed, okay. Like
business as usual.
It got one nice review in Spin, but for the most part, it got really bad reviews, if it was reviewed at all. Like, a lot of journalists wouldn't even listen to it because they're like, ew, Moby, I don't want to listen to that. And then it just kept growing. And, like, I remember when it sold like 100,000 copies worldwide. I was like, I can't believe this record has sold 100,000 copies. And then it sold 1 million copies worldwide. And then it was like 5 million copies. And at this point, I was like touring constantly.
Yeah, because I just remember then you were gone. Like, you were just gone. And it was like, oh my God, can you believe what's happening to Moby?
And I just was... And again, this is like before the dark side of liquor and whatever happened. So I was just like drunk the entire time, partying constantly.
Right.
And it
and unprecedented access to things that you've never had access to before, because it's like you're the multi-platinum selling. You became a rock star.
It was, and it's. And I sort of want to be like self-effacing and say like, oh, well, you know, I was able to stay grounded and I had some really good support from my friends and family. No, the truth is I went completely off the rails.
You were never cruel to me. Like, I never noticed. I mean, and I know you a long time, but like you were always very nice.
I don't think I was. My going off the rails didn't manifest as being mean. It manifested as being a completely entitled degenerate.
Right, just destructive to yourself.
Like, each single night had to involve like new sort of like odd heights of like liquor and drug fueled degeneracy.
Right.
And it really did. I mean, the good thing is there are stories that I unfortunately can
never
share.
say. Yeah, and good. And I don't. And I'm somebody, just as we are both people who are past those days in our life. I don't. You know, there's stories that are fun, but I also don't like to. I don't like war stories, as they call them, because I find them to be kind of always end up the same. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, we broke into a castle with Faye Dunaway, and we were all on lewds and glue.
Okay, I'm going to stop you for a second.
Yeah.
You just said you don't like stories like that.
No, but
how can you not?
I like stories that start like that, but then
for us it always ends like, and then
I was home by myself, very sad.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's I was home and I was too high to even read anything.
Yeah,
and I took 11 Xanaxes and hit myself in the head with a ball-peen hammer till I passed out. Like, that's you're right. Every single story does have that same sort of like,
of it, but
like
the end
wet
of it is
blanket
terrible.
ending.
Yeah,
it's like the most amazing 3 a.m. part of like, we were in a helicopter, like throwing frozen chickens at Conan O'Brien's house.
Yeah,
and
which he wanted us to do.
Yeah, which he was paying us to do, and he's running around doing like laps on his Segway in the front lawn.
Yeah, and then what happened? Then
I was hungover and sad.
Yeah, I was very sad. So it's bad storytelling, much like Scooby-Doo. So
that is true. Yeah, like being a drunk is kind of like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
Where it's like this exciting premise.
And I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't
for the fact that I'm human and have a liver. Yeah. Like, you take the mask off the liver and there's still this like sad, atrophied, cirrhotic thing just going. Ugh. Yeah.
So that becomes. So then, when did that nonsense stop for you?
Well, I stopped drinking and doing everything about 5 years ago.
Right.
But so in 1992, this might seem like an irrelevant tangent, like a Grandpa Simpson style story. In 1992, I went out to have vegan Chinese food, and I ate a purple eggplant, and it disagreed with me.
Right.
I then decided I don't like purple eggplants, and I didn't eat them again for quite a long time. Every single time I drank, I got debilitatingly hungover, but yet I kept going back. Like, I'd have 15 drinks a night, and the next day just be like, oh, that's so miserable, I'll never do it again, and then do the same thing.
Right.
Which is the illogic of being an addict.
Right.
And so I realized around 2004 that like the drinking wasn't working out, so I did what any sane person would do. I got drunk a few more thousand times. Mm-hmm. And then in 2008, finally was like, like this overwhelming mountain of evidence of like, I just can't do this anymore.
Right.
Like, it's someone described it once, and I know that it's a quasi-visual medium. Mm-hmm. Like, when you begin, like the fun is 10 and the consequences are 0.1.
Right.
And then slowly
that
inverse. Like then the fun becomes 1 and the consequences become 50,000.
Right. But you have, but today, you know, you are not a wreck, and it seemed like a lot of that was internal. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it never, there wasn't any sort of giant flame out or anything. It wasn't like, oh, Moby crashed his car into the Chateau Marmont.
That's the beauty of living in New York.
Right.
Is
you can get away with it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you stumble home. Like New York is just paradise for drunks.
Yeah,
like it really looks after drunks.
To be effed up in, yeah.
I mean, like here, like you meet a lot of people who got sober because of DUIs.
Right.
And like, but New York, like you just walk everywhere.
And also, you were like in this weird bubble of like there would be kind of no consequences because there was always probably a handler or an entourage. You know what I mean? It's like
and also I didn't have a real job.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So I would make up all sorts of lies as to why I had to cancel things.
Right.
And the lies just became more and more inventive. Like at first the lies were like, oh, I have the flu. And then everyone you work with, you're like, why do you have the flu?
You should go to a doctor.
300 days out of the year. You know, do you have dengue fever? Do you have Ebola? Do you have? And then you're like, oh, my cousins and I decided to drive to Montreal at 6 a.m. And then I was like, maybe people I work with will just think I'm spontaneous and whimsical and not passed out on Xanax in my bed sleeping until 5 in the afternoon.
I got something fun that we did together years ago. I did a show, a pilot for MTV, which did not get picked up.
That's right.
Me and Tom Giannis, who directed Tenacious D and worked with Human Giant and has done a million things. We wrote this thing that basically asked the question, oh, you know that show that Fogelnest used to have on MTV when he was a teenager? Well, he's in his 20s now. What if he had never grown out of it? What if he was still trying to put that together? It was like a fake documentary thing. And we wrote a scene for you, which you were very nice to be in the show. And I thought I would play the scene because even just as a standalone thing, outside of the pilot, this is just a very funny sketch where I guess all the setup you need to the premise is that I run into Moby on the street outside of an ATM. So let's take a look at this.
Hey, Moby.
Jake, how's it going? Fine, thanks. How are you? I'm just going to get some money.
Yeah, actually, me too.
You need to use your card.
What are you talking about?
It's a bank. You need to use your card to get in to use the ATM.
I know it's a bank, but you got the door right open. I'll just follow you.
No, come on. This is New York City. But you need to maintain that fine line between chaos and security.
Yeah, come on, Moby. We know each other. Don't be an ass.
I'm not being an ass. It's a financial institution, Jake.
You don't work here. You don't have any authority over this.
Jake, just use your fucking card, okay?
If you could just let me in, that'd be
No, see,
awesome.
the rules are you use your card. I'm just trying to respect the rules. Jake, back off!
Back off! What the shit?
You made me do that.
And what race? That is race! Ah!
Sorry, maybe I overreacted. Yeah, I know it burns, doesn't it? Because I got this extra special Yugoslavian mace, and it's not like that pussy American mace.
Oh, well, it works.
Yeah. So what have you been up to? I haven't seen you in a while.
I'm bringing my old show back.
Really? Squirt?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
We're on MTV?
No, it's on cable access. Hey, you want to be a guest on the show?
Cable access?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll think about it. If I'm around, maybe.
You maced me. If you could just be a guest on the show, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, I'll think about it. Do you still have my email address?
No.
It's pretty easy to remember. It's moby@moby.com.
That could like a fan club or something?
It goes to the guy who runs my fan site, but he's there like 2 days a week, and he's really responsible, so he'll get it to me.
I'll email you.
Okay.
Right. I'm taking this, by the way.
Okay, well, I still got my taser. You want to see my taser?
No, please, that's fine.
I got it in Yugoslavia where I got the mace as well.
Yeah, it's great.
You can stop a guy.
Please don't point it at me.
Oh, sorry about that.
You were so funny in that. And so much of that was improvised by you, too. Like, the whole Yugoslavian mace thing is all you. And I thank you for doing that, and that's just very funny.
Thanks. But what's funny is I sometimes think that I might play asshole, douchebag. It comes too naturally to me.
You were so good at you were in my friend John Daly's show Betas, which is Amazon, and it's just a great. It's one of those great things where it's just like, hey, is that Moby? And it is like that joke, which just kills me.
See, I have, for better or worse, I just sort of say yes to things.
Right, yeah.
And I don't mean that in some sort of like I celebrate the universe and I'm open. I mean,
for Christ's sake, you're here.
But
so,
I'm like, because I think to myself, like when I was growing up, I assumed public figures did really interesting things when they weren't doing public figure-y things.
Right.
Like I was like, oh wow, like such and such movie star, rock star. Who knows what they're doing? They're probably like on their private plane flying to Sumatra where they're going to like take large format pictures of monkeys while they're having who knows. But instead, it is safe to say that the vast majority of public figures in the world right now are on Facebook.
Yeah.
Or are, like, if they're a jerk, they're watching ESPN. There's nothing wrong with ESPN.
Sorry, David Bowie right now
is tweeting.
Yeah. He's got a secret account. He's part of Weird Twitter. He's not under David Bowie.
So I don't want to blow the ruse. Right. But basically, if I wasn't here, I'd probably be at home online.
Right.
So like, doing anything, like going on betas. I was on the Mindy Kaling show. It's like,
and you did the my buddy Tom Sharpling. You did the Postal Service auditions video, which is very fun.
Because simply, it's fun.
Yeah.
Like, and it's way more fun than like checking Google News for the 20th time in the day, or like I've got a really good weather app on my phone, and I'm like, oh wow, I wonder what the weather.
I wouldn't brag about that. Everybody has it. It comes pre-installed. It's the weather.
No,
you have a better one?
I had to get one. It was free.
Okay.
It's the Weather Underground, and I'm not a shill for the Weather Underground.
The Weather Underground? That's a terrorist organization.
I know, but that's why I think it's funny. But yeah, it's kind of like
it's great. Yeah, it's a great app. You can check the weather in New York, Los Angeles, and Australia, and also blow up a townhouse on 11th Street.
Yeah, it's kind of like having a gardening app called like Al Qaeda. Yeah.
Stop. This has been really fun. I thank you for coming and chatting with me.
Oh, my pleasure. And you're wearing a Germs t-shirt.
I am
and the
wearing
Germs are playing tonight.
Germs
well,
are playing
it depends when you're watching this.
Well, if you're watching this right now, the Germs are playing tonight at the Echoplex. Don Bowles has been on this show. You can go back in the archives and listen to the Don Bowles episode. He was the drummer in the Germs. And if you're listening to this on a podcast next week, you missed the Germs show.
Yeah.
You missed it.
But
it was
you
incredible.
Go buy the records.
Yeah.
Because Darby Crash, who was the president of the Blondie fan club.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Wait, stop the music. Stop the music. We can't end. I need to know about this.
I think Darby Crash was the president, either Darby Crash or Jeffrey Lee Pierce. One of them was the president. I think it was Darby Crash was the president of the Blondie fan club before he was in the Germs.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And
it's one of my... See, I need to find Decline of Western Civilization.
Oh, I have a copy.
Okay, I need to borrow it from you because it's one of my favorite scenes.
There's Cody, our engineer. He borrowed my copy of Decline of Western Civilization.
It's one of my favorite scenes when Darby's putting mint jelly on white bread.
Hold on, I'll get it. We'll watch it. We'll watch it right now, Moby. We don't have to end at any time, do we?
It's so sad.
Yeah.
And then of course, like knowing, like, because I was watching, I was like, oh, and he dies.
Right.
Sorry, I don't want to. It's not like a spoiler alert.
I'm
assuming most people know that Darby.
The internet's
died.
not working. Yeah. I've showed that clip on this show before.
Of the mint jelly on the bread.
I will get you a copy of Decline of Western Civilization. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
Start the music again. I'll do the plugs properly. You can see all the videos that we talked about at youtube.com/the Fogelnest Files. Also doing the Riot Fest in Los Angeles. We're going to do the Fogelnest Files live. Coming to San Francisco Sketch Fest. If you check my website, jakefogelnest.com, there'll be info about all of those things. And Moby's on Twitter at The Little Idiot.
The Little Idiot.
And he's got, you put out an amazing new video today, which I will link to.
I maintain it's the best music video ever made in the history of music videos.
Yeah, so there's that. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure.
It is Jake Fogelnest saying, Seacrest out.